Howdy, folks, and welcome to the Homestead today. I hope you're having a wonderful day and appreciate you tuning in here and listening to today's Porch Talk. And today here on Porch Talk, my subject is going to be about anarchy and or perhaps civil war. And before we get into the subject today, I want to thank you all of our new subscribers and want to welcome you aboard, and all of our loyal subscribers that's been with us a long time. I want to thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart. And if you want to help our channel grow, if you want to see us succeed here in this venture that we're doing here with YouTube and Facebook and all the others, just simply subscribing here on YouTube is a great benefit and really helps our channel grow. Also, if you hit that thumbs up button, it helps. And I also enjoy reading your comments and you're very nice, and I'd like to meet each and every one of you. I wish I could sit down here on the back porch and have coffee sometime with every viewer. I know that's impossible, and some of you are in other countries, and it's a long way to travel just to have a cup of coffee, but I do feel like you're my friends, and we enjoy visiting with you each week here on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. So I want to say a big thank you today. It's chilly out here, and I've had to put on gloves and wearing a coat, but I still like to do these outside on the porch as long as I can. It's eventually I'm going to probably have to go back inside and do some videos, but for today we're going to attempt this one on outside. And there's been some geese flying over too low, so the temperatures are changing, the seasons are changing here. But anyway, going to get on into my subject, and today is preparing for anarchy or civil war. And it don't really matter what type of title you want to put on it, but I want to explain what I'm talking about here. Whenever folks decide in a country, a nation, to change their form of government, and there gets some steam, don't really matter how many, but to change regardless. And this isn't a political statement. You might take it that way, whatever. But to change a form of government, you go through an anarchy spell. And it's not just they've called a lot of these protest anarchy, where they're pulling down statues, they're destroying buildings, burning buildings, looting. A lot of the protest, a lot of times they're peaceful protests, supposed to be started out as peaceful protests, but they end up in rioting and looting, and then they'll oftentimes call it anarchy. And I want to explain what anarchy means to me. Is when you change into a form of government, a new form. Say we're a democracy, some call it a republic, whatever, but you were to change into socialism or a communism or a mixture of whatever. Maybe now they're calling it socialist democracy, or whatever you want to call it. But to switch into a new form of government, you pretty much have to shut down the old form of government, and it has to be destroyed. And you'll go into a period of anarchy. So usually to change a form of government, you have to get people dissatisfied and upset to the point and bring down your law enforcement, and every structure of your government has to be brought down to its knees and surrender to what comes forth as the new standard. Now, I want to say something to you. When a country, any country, changes their form of government, it never turns out exactly the way that they planned on it to. In writing and in theory, in the way it is promoted and the way it's campaigned, it sounds real good on the face. But if it turned out exactly what they had planned, it might be pretty good. But it never does turn out the way that they planned on it turning out. And I'll give you an example of that happening is Hitler and the Nazis. And Hitler, he promoted something that sounded great. He actually started the first social security system. And our social security system is modeled off of Hitler. They don't like to talk about it. They don't like to tell that fact, but it's actually something that Hitler started. Hitler started all these social programs. Building Volkswagens was a social plan that Hitler developed. Also, going into war and building their war machine drove their economy. Their economy started booming. Things started going. People were having jobs that had been unemployed. Because of the Treaty of Versailles back from World War I, the Germany was really hurting. It was really probably an unfair pact that was done at the end of World War I against Germany, and it allowed a giving of birth to a new movement. And Hitler caused so much anarchy to be happening, not just himself, but his Nazi party. And he got people so riled up before he ever become in power. One of the things they did, they had a form of government like we do, where we have a Senate and a House, and they got such a movement in their branch of the government, the Nazis, that they could get up and walk out and shut the government down. They couldn't make budgets. They couldn't pass bills. They couldn't get anything done because they had gridlock. Or if they didn't have a certain percentage there to vote, I believe here in the United States it's not that. They can call whichever party's in control and they can vote and they have procedures they go through, and a lot of them are just procedures that they have that's really not law binding, but it's procedures that they have come up with over the years. The political leaders, whether they were Democrat, Republican, Independent, or whatever. So they go by those principles and things that guide them. But I think they can vote on bills without a certain majority of people being there present in the House or in the Senate. And they can get some things done if they didn't want to show up. But anyway, Hitler and his folks would just walk out. They shut the country down. And they got to a point where it was pretty much the Nazis were ruling, and they continued to grow and get voted in. And finally, they made Hitler as their chancellor or president, whatever you want to call him. They have their titles. They call him here. We'd call him president. But when he come in power, he was given all power, and he could pretty much do anything he wanted to do. And then he launched them into war, and through the rhetoric that he spread, they changed their whole form of government into a new form of government. But we see that the outcome was not good. For a while, it appeared that everybody was doing better. Everyone had a chicken in their pot, no poor, no hunger, no nothing. But we realized that certain groups were being persecuted, and the Jews being one of them. Even Christians, minorities were discriminated against and thrown into concentration camps and murdered, all in the name of changing their government. And they had to get people out of the way. They had to get the Jews out of the way. They had to get Christians out of the way that was against what they were doing. Anyone that spoke out against what they're doing, much like what's happening today, they're trying to get anyone that would go against their beliefs or their ideas is treated so badly, so hatefully, so mean treated that it's designed to scare you into being quiet. And I hear a lot of talk that people won't tell who they're going to vote for president because of, it's people that's supporting Trump. It's been on the news that there are analysts who say they're having trouble getting a true response out of who's going to vote for President Trump. There's a lot of folks who want to vote for him, but they're afraid to admit it because they will be treated badly, and we've seen it happen, and it's just a fact that it happens. Now, to me, in America, you're free to vote, should be free to vote who you want to vote for. That's also a private matter. When you go to the voting booth and you put who you vote for, or you mail in your ballot, that is up to you. You vote who you want to. It's your choice. If you're a woman, you don't have to vote just because your husband says so. If you're a man, you don't have to vote just because your wife says you have to vote. And you don't have to be intimidated. And that's what they do in these countries that have switched forms of government. They intimidate the people so badly that they're afraid to even come out and vote. And that's anarchy. And we are slowly, our country, I feel, is leading into a period of anarchy. We've already started in anarchy, and it's going to grow and get worse. So preparing your homestead, your home, your life, and getting prepared for what would happen, because there are a lot of uncertainties. Oftentimes when a country edges into anarchy, it gives rise to some other form of government that they never even thought possible, and most usually it's for the worse and not for the better. Oftentimes they may think it's going to be for the better, but some think, well, it would be like a utopia type thing, that everything's just hunky-dory and would be fine, and we'd have a perfect society. We'd never have any more poor people, but Jesus said you'd always have the poor with you. Also, there's a concern that something would happen here in the United States, maybe a surprise attack by our enemies. Some believe that this virus has been put upon us by our enemy. It's been a planned attack to promote globalism and things of that nature. And some of the stuff that's been touted, I kind of wonder. I'm wondering what business Bill Gates has being on television telling folks how they should operate as far as this virus. He's not a doctor. He's a computer guy. Some are afraid to take the shots for the virus because they're afraid they're going to put some kind of chip in you to track you. And there's been a lot of talk about tracking folks. There's devices that you can turn on your cell phone now, your smartphones, to allow them to track you in case you've come into contact with somebody else. They're wanting everybody to do that, and they say, well, eventually put a chip in. So a lot of folks are afraid to be vaccinated for this virus, and it's causing a lot of concern. There's folks, too, that are afraid the vaccine will be harmful. There'll be so many other side effects, so there's a lot of... But I go back, though, to the point of these leaders such as Gates and others that have given their opinion, and then you have billionaires and millionaires like Soros and different ones that are promoting causes that are democracy, anti-republic. I'm not meaning Republican, I mean a republic. Oftentimes we refer to our United States of America as a republic, meaning it's free society. And so there's a lot of folks against what we have, and they think that somehow by changing our form of government, everything would be hunky-dory. But there is a belief that right now in the Bible, and try to explain this real briefly, but there will come a time, and the Bible warns Israel about peace, and then sudden destruction. Well, for some reason, they believe that we won't come to Israel's defense. One of those reasons they believe is that perhaps we have entered into anarchy, our country is in such disarray that we cannot come and help, or perhaps we're so war-weary that we won't, or an enemy has attacked us and we aren't able to, but something will happen that will keep the United States from coming and defending Israel. Right now, I believe we would be defending them, we'd be helping them, but they believe that there will be a time of peace, it'll all look real good, and then the nations will come against Israel. China and Russia and Iraq and other countries will gather against them, and when they, not Iraq, but Iran, but they will gather against them, and we won't come to their end. We're referred to in the book of Revelations and prophecy in the Bible as the young lion. And so in the book of Daniel, we're referred to as the young lion, meaning we come out of England. In England, they are referred to as the lion. So for some reason, we don't come to their help. And a lot of Bible scholars believe it's because something has happened here. And here lately, there's been a lot of talk that perhaps that we've entered into anarchy and such disarray in our government that we could not go. So to keep from getting into a whole lot of details about that, we could do a whole Porch Talk just on that very subject. But a lot of folks listen that don't believe the Bible, so then that's your opinion. But I happen to believe what the Bible says, and I believe it's going to come true. We're also told that in the last days, and I believe we're living them now, that there'll be famines and earthquakes and pestilences and wars and rumors of wars and so forth and so on. And we're in all that right now. It seems like all of these things are coming together at one time. Here in the United States, we're in an election year, of course, and it's very concerning who will be our next leader. But I believe we're going to go into anarchy and have problems no matter who the next leader. I believe there is a movement, and it's not going to end with this election cycle. No matter which guy gets it, it's going to be promoted. And it's going to grow to change our form of government that we have. So we'll have to go into anarchy. Oftentimes that means lawlessness, and we've seen a great move against our law enforcement here. Somebody commented the other day and said they didn't know that they're trying to defund police. I'm like, what are you? Do you ever watch the news? Have you not heard that some of these cities already, there are cities that have took the money away from the police departments and are using it for other areas and are even closing a lot of their police departments, have voted to do away with the police doing I'm going to tell you stupid stuff. We need the police. We need law enforcement. We need, maybe some of our laws need to be adjusted. But it's all a part of moving us to anarchy and destroying what we have here. And I'm going to tell you, folks, I like what we have. Does it need work on at times? There are things that we have failed, but that will be no matter what form of government you have. If you have this socialist thing that they're wanting, they're going to take all the money from the rich and give it to the poor. Well, eventually your rich won't have nothing, or the rich will move their money out of the country. And I'm going to tell you something else. Oftentimes when they've decided they wanted to change their form of government, just like it was in the Civil War, if you went to school, you studied about the Civil War, do you realize that the war was fought mostly by poor folk that had no stake in the game? They never owned a slave. They were too poor to own a plantation. They couldn't afford slaves, but they were called up and forced to go into war through drafts. North and South was forced, and the rich, the high up folks, the uppity-do folks that could afford slaves and servants and so forth, they were the ones that got to sit back and pull the strings and dictate what happens and stuff. So the ones that'll hurt is the average folks like myself and you that are watching here. Just the average old Joes will be the ones that will suffer. A lot of folks suffered. They were too old to fight in war, but they suffered because of the war. And a lot of folks don't realize what will happen if we enter into civil conflict, if we enter into civil war, if we enter into anarchy. I'm talking full-blown anarchy where we're giving birth to a new form of government. It never turns out quite like you think. And I guarantee you, when folks wanted secession from the Union and to succeed from the Union and wanted to be taken away from that and wanted a different form of government, they never, ever thought about what the consequence was. They never thought about their sons and their daughters being killed. They never thought about husbands that would not come home anymore. They never thought about while the men were off to war that their wives would be raped and their homes pillaged by the adversary. They never thought about all of these consequences that would come along during this time of anarchy. And that's what United States went into, a time of anarchy that they had never seen before and hasn't been seen since. But that a lot of folks don't realize there's consequences to the decisions that we make. I happen to like what we have right now, and I'm going to tell you just a little bit. I think it's neat that an old poor country boy can come, or girl, can better themselves in the United States of America. If they will work, and you got a work ethic, I always say this, that nothing will work till you do. So if you'll work, if you'll get out there and you'll do something with yourself, if you're a lazy slug, you're never going to have nothing. And this is another thing I want to say. I have friends that they don't want to succeed. They don't want anything, but they'll just pretty much tell you they're just satisfied with what they are. They don't care. They don't want the government giving them nothing. They don't want a handout. They don't want nobody messing with them. They want to live in a little old bitty rundown shack. I have a friend that has a little old place, and I mean, it is rough. And he's young, and he wants to be free. He wants to go hunting, fishing when he wants to. He don't want to work. He's happy. He found a little gal that had the same thoughts he had. They got married, and never had children, but they got married, and they're happy with their little life that they have. They don't owe no bills. They don't have no worries, and that's what they want. But the thing is, it's nice is that you're free in the United States of America to do that if you want to. But there's folks that make those choices and then want to blame everybody else, and that's where they're wrong. Is when you want to blame me and others for your failures. If you fail, and I've had some rough times. I've had very rough times. I'm definitely not no rich man here. In fact, when we do our taxes, I tell my wife we're in the poverty level based upon the standard. But I'm happy and satisfied where I am, and I'm thankful. And I don't. There's rich people, these snotty-nosed, uppity rich folks. I don't want to be like them. Maybe you do. Maybe you want to live like them. That's your business. A friend of mine, they had asked him if a rich guy told him that he called him and said, "You're going to go out and campaign for Trump." They were having a boat rally. And he said, "No." He said, "I don't want on a boat. I can't go out there." And he said, "Well, I got one down there at the boat dock." Said it's over $100,000 boat, $150,000, whatever the price is. He knew this from before, but he was telling him, he said, "You go and just go get that boat." Said, "They have a key down there. I'll call and tell them you take my boat out." And my friend said, "I didn't go take that big expensive boat out." He said, "I'm like, what if something went wrong with it? I can't afford to fix the boat, But we're happy the way we are. And I think that's something that folks would be happy. Problem is today we got a lot of young people that have never worked and earned anything for themselves. And they've been handed everything, and now they're out in adulthood, and they don't know what it is to stand on their own 2 feet, so they think the government ought to furnish everything they have. I get these young people saying they can't go to school, they can't work and go to school at the same time. They can't go to college and work all at the same time, and it just cracks me up. And I'm like, what in the world? And I was like, I did. I went to tech school, and I worked a full-time job and went to school 5 days a week, every day. And I went and did all that and managed and survived. And these young people today, you'll see them, you'll say, "Hey, I thought you were in college." "Oh, I only have to go in on, have to be there from 10 to noon on Tuesday and 1 to 4 on Thursday," or something like that. And I was like, "Well, you could work the other days. There's a lot of places would allow you to work," and they complain. The thing is, they're so spoiled and had everything handed to them for the most part that they think when they get grown it ought to still be that way. And the problem is, it sounds good, some professor telling you that it's a utopia world, that everything's just handed to you, but sadly it just don't work that way. Robin Hood. I love to watch Robin Hood movies. I love reading old stories about Robin Hood and how he went and took from the rich and gave for the poor. But really, Robin Hood was just a thief. He went and stole from the rich and gave to the poor. And I know there's other things, how the king was wicked and stuff, but sometimes I've glamorized something that really, just to tell you the truth, Robin Hood was a plain old thief. And there's a lot of folks that are thieves and want to take from people, take things that's not theirs to have, and they want to do it through the government, through taxation. And I remember my first job I had when I went to tech school, I was paid $4.05 an hour. Got a job working at night, a few hours a night, and then I'd work on Saturdays and make enough money because I had to pay room and board and had to have gas and my eats and all that stuff. My family would have helped me if they could have, and in emergencies they did help, but my family didn't have money to send. There were some students that went to school where I did that their parents sent them $150, $200 a week allowance just to help them out. They didn't have to work, but I had to. And it never hurt me one bit to work. And I'm thankful for where I came from. When I was in high school, my dad always believed you needed to work. And if you wanted money, you got out and worked. My dad helped me get my first truck by helping me get a loan. He never paid a payment on it. I paid my own insurance, paid my own way. My parents let me ride on their insurance, car insurance, but I had to pay my insurance, and I survived, and I made it, and it helped me be stronger because of that. Now, if I ever complained and told my dad, well, I don't have much gas, or I don't have money for gas, my dad would say, well, if you quit that running around, you would have gas, So, but it was, I supported myself, and the reason was I had 4 other siblings, and my folks were still raising them, so I had to grow up, but I survived, and it helped me be a stronger. And I don't want people helping me. I don't want the government helping me. I don't need that help. Our town here, when I went to tech school, when I graduated high school, they gave us a scholarship, and the Lions Club gave out every year, and it was $250 scholarship. And after you were in school for like your first year or half a year, whatever it was, certain amount of time, you could come back with proof of that somehow, and they would give you a check for $250. I'm very, very thankful for that $250, and I needed it, and I appreciated that. But I would have went on to school whether I'd ever had that scholarship or not. Now I go to these graduations, and these kids, some of them's getting, $150,000 worth of scholarships, full ride scholarships, things that's just unbelievable what they get, and they don't even take advantage of it. It's sad, but anyhow, and college isn't for everybody, but here in the United States, you have the opportunity. When I was in high school, I had a lawn mowing business. My dad helped me get started lawn mowing. People would say they needed something done around their place, the leaves raked, their garden tilled, their yard mowed. My dad would say, my son will do it, and he'd bring me by and drop me off with a push mower. One of my uncles gave me a lawn boy push mower, and told me, he said, you're getting in that business, you need a lawnmower. Gave me a little push mower. I'd go mow a yard, and most usually for $5, I'd mow somebody's yard and weed eat and everything. And my dad would come back and pick me up when I got old enough to drive and got my own. In fact, I started driving when I was 15 before I ever had a driver. In fact, I was driving when I was a little kid, very young. But to go to town and stuff, I got my own vehicle when I was around 15-year-old. And I'd drive it to school. I'd go to town and get things, go mowing yards and things with my truck. My dad, back then it was the good old days. They would let you go do that kind of stuff as long as you didn't cause trouble or anything. You could go drive whether you had a driver's license or not. And I bought an old junky trailer and put on the back of that. I had a little 77 Datsun pickup. It was about, most people would have thought was wore out. And did you know that truck's still going today? And some of my relatives own it and are still using it at this time. But it was a little extended cab Datsun pickup. And boy, that was a running little old dude. Had a 4-cylinder engine in it. And I'd pull lawnmowers around, and kids at school would tease me about being the lawnmower guru or whatever, but I'd bring a trailer and park it in the parking lot at school and have 2 lawnmowers. I got enough money where I could buy me a riding lawnmower. Later I bought another one, and I'd have 2 of them. If one quit, I'd just hop on the other one and finish the job out. And but anyway, I bought used lawnmowers, able to get them, but I was able to build. When I went to tech school, I quit all that, but I had quite a business. When I graduated high school, I had developed quite a enterprise just mowing yards around this area. And like I say, most of the yards were $5. Some of those people I go now and do work for, and I'll tell them, I used to mow your yard for $5. And maybe they didn't own the place, but somebody else did. But I'd say the previous owners paid me $5, and I'd mow it with a push mower, and they'll get tickled, say, we can't even get somebody to come over and look at our yard for $5 anymore. But through hard work, that's what I'm going to say about America. We were poor. We didn't realize we were poor until I got grown, and I realized we was poor. But one thing we had a whole lot of in our family was love, and my daddy and mom were so good. We always had food to eat, and my mom could make tree bark taste good, and we always had food to eat. They'd call you in to supper, and everybody gathered around the supper table at night about the same time every night. And it was one time that it was one of the most peaceful and blessed times is when we gathered around the supper time. Then we'd go to church on Sundays, and that was always neat. We'd all put on our Sunday best, and we'd go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night. We'd go on Wednesday nights. It was all such a wonderful life. Well, we didn't have no money, but we had happiness, and you can't buy happiness. I'm going to tell you that right now. But we had something that was wonderful, and I thank God for it. And but getting into all this, we were able to work, and all of us are better off. All of my dad's family, they were raised poor. They are all better off today than when they were growing up. My whole family is all better off. Now, they might whine and complain this sometimes because they don't have the latest of this or that, but we're way better off than we were. And friends of mine, that people that I know that were just old country folks just like we were, and some of them have become millionaires, have just been so successful in life. And most of them that I knew that have done really well in life are still just old humble folks like me. You would never even know they had anything, but they worked hard. Most of them didn't even go to college. They just got out and worked hard and saved their money and was disciplined, and they become very, very successful, what I consider successful. But really, money isn't success. It's you're having a family and raising your children and them growing up to be somebody, and the peace of mind and stuff that you have. But there's folks that say that somehow this American thing that we have, and there's another thing, no matter what color of your skin is, in America, you can grow up to be somebody. I know that there's still prejudices, but they're not near what they used to be. Some want to change our form of government because there's prejudices. There'll always be prejudices, I'm going to tell you. There's blacks that don't like whites. There's whites that don't like blacks. There's Indians that don't like whites. I mean, it don't really make no difference. You're always going to have that. Just like you're always going to have poor people, no matter what form of government you have, no matter how much you want to brainwash people, there will always be prejudices. But the prejudices are not as bad. I remember when I went off, I took Votech when I was in high school, and we'd go to another town, and I had never been around much of minorities, of black people, okay? Blacks, whatever you want to call them. I'd not been around them here. So it was a different world. Well, they were kind of the same way towards us. But after we got to know each other, we become great friends and realize we're the same. Just the color of our skin may be different, but we think the same, or we breathe the same air. We're the same people, and we become great friends. And there was an elderly black gentleman there that I really, really liked. Got to like. But he was real cold to us when we first started. And he told us that anyone from our community here was racist, that he had been raised that way. And he said, "You boys are pretty good boys. Y'all just pretty good kids." Said he was an older gentleman, and the government was paying him to go to school to get a trade that he could do something different in his life. And maybe his job had been laid off. I really don't know what the deal was. But, I remember him telling us about everything, but I can't remember all the details. But, I mean, he was just a salt of the earth type person. But at first, he was cold towards us, and because of that, I was kind of cold towards him. I was like, I ain't really been around black people. I don't know how to, I've heard stuff, but don't know. And after I was around him, I found out they was the same as we were, and it was just wonderful. And we all become friends, and some of them, I'm sure he's probably passed on now. He was on up in years back then, and he was probably 70 back then. And I think, you used to think somebody that was 50 was old, but he told me, he said, "Your community where you're from, my mom used to tell me not to be there after dark, that they would kill you." And he said, I would always make sure I wasn't there after dark. And I asked my grandpa back in that time, he was still alive, and my grandpa said, yes. He said, it was that way here. And it was very racist. It's not that way now. We have blacks that live here, and we have Indians, we have Chinese, Oriental type folks. And, I may not be calling them, everybody changes their terms all the time. You don't know what to call folks the proper way, but we're all Americans. If they're American citizen, they're American, and it's wonderful. And we all get along real good. I have made real good friends with a Chinese gentleman over here, and have gotten really to be friends with him and his wife. And it's a little hard understanding him because his dialect is his English, and I'm sure he has trouble listening to my Okie Hick talk too. So we have a little trouble communicating. But I was like, it's wonderful here, and he's successful. This guy come here from China, and managed somehow to finally get a farm going, and he works himself silly, but he is successful. He's got 2 or 3 homes. Has had some of his family move here, living in some of those homes. He has done wonderful farming, and he raising chickens is what he does, but he has been very, very successful, and he's a good person. I mean, good, honest, salt of the earth type people. I'm like, man, here in America, I know another lady that's from a foreign country that come here, and her mother had told her that if you come to America and if you could become a citizen, that if you would work, you could become something. And she did, and she started buying rental properties. Somehow she got a loan to buy a rental house. And she started, at her work, she would take and double the payments and pay 2 payments. The rent would pay a payment, and she would pay a payment. She got the first one paid for, and she told me her story because she ended up having, at the time, and I'm sure now she's way better, but had like 40 rental properties, and most of them were paid off. And she still worked every day and took all the money coming in from the rent on her rental properties, and she was paying for the ones that she still owed. She'd get them paid off and take all that money to pay on more and more. And this lady didn't even know what she had, and she could have quit work. She worked for Walmart and could have quit Walmart and just lived off of it, but she was a worker, and she knew how to manage her money. And this is a female, a foreigner, but she become a U.S. citizen, and was become a success story here in the United States of America. And now there's folks that want to switch that system. It's just hard to believe. It's hard to understand why. So we have to prepare. And one way of preparing, folks are preparing for anarchy. I hope it don't happen. I'm preparing for the worst, but I'm hoping for the best, and I'm hoping and praying for the best. And I can't prepare for everything, but if I'll do my best, I know that God will do the rest if I'll do my best and do my part. And I'm trusting in God to help us. I'm praying for our country, praying for our leaders that they'll do the right thing. But in being prepared for it, having around ammunition sold out in most places around these parts. People are buying up guns and ammo. People are going and learning skills of how to shoot firearms and how to defend themselves, because some are concerned about the looting and the rioting and stuff that's going on right now, but people believe it's going to be worse. And many people that I have talked to, many around these parts, believe that we're going to end up in a civil war or in a total anarchy type thing, because they're going to continue trying to change our form of government and lead us into that. So they're buying up firearms to defend themselves, because they believe when it all breaks down, people are going to have a mass exodus from the major cities. And they're going to come out in the suburbs and the countrysides and the hills, and they're going to be hungry, and they're going to need things. And I'm just telling you, that's what folks' thoughts are. And if you don't believe that, I'm going to tell you something right now that's happening this very moment as I'm giving this video. There are people moving in here. The land values, we're in a very rural area, but land values have skyrocketed. People are moving in here. We've had friends that have wanted to sell their home. One particular friend said he was going to sell his house. He had like 40 acres and a little house. And they listed it thinking it would take months to sell. Within 3 days, their home was sold. Another individual I know, because of their work, wants to move. They have 10 acres and a double-wide trailer. They were asking a very high price, or I felt like it was way overpriced for what they were getting, but they wanted to sell it and move closer to her work. I'm going to go into a bunch of details where she works, but she had transferred, and she thought instead of driving so far, she would switch. So she went and put into switch jobs and did that. So she's been driving all this distance. But anyway, she said she listed her home for sale, and she thought it would take a while to sell it. Within 5 days, she had over 30, whatever you want to call it, hits or whatever, on wanting to buy her own home within 5 days. And in fact, they had it sold within 5 days. So she had to hurry up in emergency, get out the people who wanted to move there. But they're moving from big cities, New York, California, states that are with big cities, Colorado, different places that they are moving here from. Most everybody that I've known that's moved here moved from a bigger city in a state a ways from here, and are moving here and looking for land and somewhere to settle, and they are paying pretty high prices to get here. And it's not just a few, and it is not just here in Oklahoma. I'm hearing it all over the United States, and folks have commented on my videos. People send me emails. We get letters. We get so much communication here, and people are telling me that it's the same way in their neighborhood. And a lot of folks are worried that folks are going to move from some of these areas and bring their political ideas that are against what we believe and try to change us. But the ones that I have met here anyway said that they are moving here because the political atmosphere has gotten so crazy where they're at. They wanted to move somewhere that had more political views that are in line with them. So hopefully that's true. But there is a mass change here in our country. Preparing for civil unrest, preparing for anarchy, preparing for civil war also means, besides having a way to defend yourself should it come to that, because if there's lawlessness and people are out looting and coming to your places, and we don't tell everything out here that we're doing, but we're protecting ourselves. But there's other things. Having food and water. We talk about that a lot here. Alaska Prepper. There's others out there that are telling you what you need to be, how you need to prepare. And I've tried to do some videos, and going to get more videos coming out of different things that we actually do here that we're doing to prepare, because a lot of folks are sitting back and ain't doing nothing, and I think they're going to be caught unaware all of a sudden when this all hits. In this real world scenario that's coming on, there's going to be a lot of folks that are shocked and awed by what is going to happen here in America. So having food put back, some water put back, having a little cash put back. Some recommend gold and silver, getting your finances in order. Right now, while you can, do all that you can. Somebody commented this week, and I didn't know quite how to take it. Some people do things because they're trying to argue, but somebody said they just live check to check. They can't afford to have any extra food. They can't afford to put anything back. And I'm just going to tell you, it's what you want to do. I've had people tell me, you'll do what you want to do. And I've had folks tell me, I can't afford to put any food back. I can't afford to get prepared. I can't afford to do anything. But while you're talking to them, in the same conversation will come up how they lost $300 at the casino last week. While you're talking to them, they smoke a pack of cigarettes. While you're talking to them, they got 4 children, and every one of them, including infants, have a cell phone in their hand. They have a color TV in every room, satellite, internet. They have the latest of everything, and they're saying, I can't afford to put a little food back. You're not going to win me over telling me that. You'll do what you want to do. If you want to get prepared, this is hard-hitting stuff, but you'll do what you want to do. If you want to do it and you want to get prepared, you can if you got to want to. I wouldn't jump out, recommend anyone just go crazy and just do stupid stuff. I've known people that's gone out and bought $1,000 worth of light bread and brought home, and thinking that they would put it all in the freezer or they would store it on the shelves and it won't last. And learn how to make some bread. Get you some supplies back. And, if you get a little bargain on bread, you go to one of these day-old stores and you can get 5 loaves for $1 or $1. Used to, you could do that back when I was a kid. You get 5 loaves for $1 old sale, but you can't do that no more. But let's say you get 5 loaves for $1 a piece, 5 for $5 or something, and you put some in the freezer. That's fine, but don't go out and just go crazy with stuff that's going to ruin. But buy things that you can put back a little bit and start out and say, I want to get enough food put back where I have a week's worth of food. That's a reasonable start. And then say, now I got the week's worth of food put back. I got a little cash put back. I'm going to work on that, having enough a week's worth of cash maybe put back, or savings or something. There's all kinds of things, and we could get into all kinds of if, ands, or buts and how to do it. And I don't have time today because I can tell I've already gone a pretty good while here today. So I'm just going to tell you, get yourself ready and get yourself prepared mentally, physically, but most importantly, get yourself ready spiritually with the Lord. I think you better buckle your seatbelt. You better be buckled in with the Lord and be ready, because we have some tough times ahead, folks. And if you're ever going to get prepared, now is the time. Hey, I appreciate you watching today. May God richly bless you. Thanks for watching another episode of Porch Talk. Try to air these videos every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock p.m. And we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Now we're gone.